Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. Hello, nice to meet everybody. Thank you for cramming yourselves into this room. It's a world record attempt here at Sheffield that we're trying, and you've done very well. Thank you. Welcome to Mentor Me, Mentor You. My name is Kieran Murtagh, and I will be moderating this panel today. I'm hoping it won't require much moderation, to be honest, but you never know. We're going to talk about the concept of mentoring and how that works in our industry, as it might be different from other industries, and what we can do to try and engender an idea of helping each other along the path of our careers and seeing how we can mentor each other and what we can offer each other from various perspectives. And I've got a great panel here who I will introduce in a moment as to what they do. Before that, though, we just kind of want to get a feel for who's in the room. So this is the audience participation bit. So put your hands up if you're a writer. Oh, right, okay. Hello, everybody. Did you all have lots of free time, did you? Is that what it was? Brilliant. All right, hands up if you are a producer. Brave people. Well done. Outnumbered but not outgunned, I'm sure. Hands up if you're an animator. Hello. And hands up if you're something else. It's good to know where you are in the room. Thank you for that. We will find out more about that later on. Some more questions. Hands up if you've ever been with or worked for a Teletubby. Anybody work with, for, or near a Teletubby? A few of you. Good. Brilliant. Fantastic. Put your left hand up if you've ever winked. Left hand up if you've ever winked. Your right hand up if you've ever blinked. Okay. Now wink and blink at the person next to you. Okay. That's our strobe effect. We'll be using that later if it all goes a bit pear-shaped. Put your hands up if you've ever been a mentor. A few, good, all right, fantastic. Hands up. Put your hands up if you've ever mentored somebody else. Oh, that's okay. It's fine.
You can do both, Joe.
Yeah, you can do both. It's fine. Fantastic. Hands up if you're a cat person. Okay, hands up if you're a dog person. Okay. Hands up if you're a gerbil person. Okay, again, good to know where you're on the room, sir. And hands up if you think you would be a better culture secretary than Nadine Dorries. Fantastic. I just want to get a question that everybody had a chance to put their hands up. Well done. I was worried last night that it wouldn't be relevant, but apparently she's still clinging on in there, so, that's the problem with prepping too hard, isn't it, really? Will they still be here? So, great. I'm glad you're all here and out of your post-lunch slumbers. So I'm going to introduce our panel. We've got some fantastic people here to talk about mentoring and their experiences on both sides of that. I'm going to start at the end here with Mariama Ives Moiba. She was one of the winners of the BAFTA Rockcliffe New Writing Competition and is currently writing on things like Nova Jones and Pip and Posy and The Rubbish World of Dave Spud and Messy Ghost Okido. So please welcome Mariama. Thank you. Next to Mariama, we have the unflappable Tim Compton. He is the joint head of kids and animation at Line. His credits include The House of Anubis, Rocket's Island, and Evermore, and as well as Free Rein. He and I were actually at university together, and he's never given me a job. So, just goes to show it's not always who you know, is it? Or perhaps he does know me. And that's another reason. But it's nice to have you here, Tim. And next to me here is Becky Overton. She's been working in television for 20 years. Surely not, Becky, surely not. A typo there. Among her credits are Thomas and Friends, Miffy's Adventures Big and Small, Justin's House, Jojo Gran Gran as well. And Justin's House, I mean, it's like the bill, isn't it, for children's writers? Everyone's got to have been through Justin's House at some point. And Tim,
Hands up.
and Becky, I didn't give you a round of applause for Tim and Becky, please. I beg your pardon. A joy to have you here. Thank you for coming along. We're going to start out by talking a little bit about people's experiences of mentoring and what their experiences have been as they've gone through the industry. We're all from slightly different perspectives and different places within the industry, so it's good to get an idea of how that can impact you at different points in your career. I think one of the things we really want to talk about today is how it's a lifelong journey, it's a career journey within this business. And often mentoring is focused at particular points at your career. And you get offered that help along the way, but sometimes once you stop being within that particular range, it stops being there. And we want to talk a bit more about how we can engender that community within ourselves. So, Mariama, do you want to talk a little bit about the mentoring experiences you've had in the beginning of your career?
So my experiences with mentoring is through competitions. And through those competitions, most of them, it was like a year-long mentoring scheme was involved. And once the year-long scheme finished, then I just stayed in contact with people. So basically every year I would just send them an email updating them like, this is what I'm writing on now, or this is what I'm trying to write on, and this is another competition that I've entered or got into, basically just so they wouldn't forget me and know that I was still trying to become a writer. And an example of that is I did Triforce Incubator in 2017, and then 4 years later they were able to get me on a trial for doctors. So I think it's definitely worth like just keeping in touch with mentors and just being kind and friendly and approachable as well, and willing to learn, basically.
Brilliant, thank you, Mariama. And I think that's quite an interesting thing. So they're kind of more formal of the mentoring packages that you can apply in this competition. And I think one of the things that we were talking about before this session was that those are really great things to have, those formal mentoring, but it does feel like you have to enter a competition or you have to win a thing. And I think it would be nice to move to a place where actually you can reach out to whoever you wish to find a mentor without actually having to win a competition or win a thing and get that particularly intense bit for about a year or so and then goodbye, good luck, see you soon. So we'll talk a bit more about that later. Tim, what are your experiences?
Of mentoring or...
Yes, yeah.
What's wrong here?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, it's been a long 20 years since university, Tim, but I don't know if everybody wants to hear.
I brought all my Edinburgh anecdotes.
Oh, yeah, God,
Yeah, it's often driven by necessity, really. So I've, for example, read someone's radio drama script, and a couple of months later they were in the writer's room, and then a couple of months after that they took over a head writing job on that show, and it was just because they shone, really. And they were completely new, and it was just about reading that script and thinking, this is very strong, why don't we try you out? And then we kept trying that writer out, and it ended very well. And we're still working with them a lot. We've just taken on an animation intern, and that's because we're doing our first animated series, and my animation skills are quite rusty, so I know quite a lot about stop frame, but I don't know a lot about 3D CG, so I'm always saying, Jess, how does this work? She's still studying, so it's a two-way street, mutually beneficial.
Well, I think that's the key, isn't it? It's kind of knowing that actually you are mentoring someone, but at the same time, younger people in this industry have experiences that are vastly different to people who might be elsewhere in their career in this industry and might have more relevant aspects of skills that you just haven't kept up with. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Becky, what's your experience?
So I have been mentored and do mentor now, and it really doesn't feel that long ago that I was here searching for mentors. We've talked a lot about imposter syndrome, haven't we, on the run up to this, and I still feel like I need mentoring a lot of the time. But the mentoring I've done has been varied. Sometimes it's happened as part of head writing or script editing, and as part of the team I've been given newer writers. So I've been doing it alongside head writing and script editing. Other times I've done it as a specific mentor scheme working alongside production. Those are the sort of official ones. Unofficially, I've done bits of mentoring at various stages of career. So sometime a writer that has come from comedy or theatre and wants to get into TV, or live action to animation, or vice versa, or a career change. So people that have been in staff jobs and are thinking about making the plunge to full-time writing. Done quite a bit of that because that's what I did. So it is varied, and sometimes it can be a 15-minute chat. Sometimes it can be, like Mariama was saying, it's kind of a relationship that builds over time.
Yeah, brilliant. So building on from that, those kind of more informal mentoring experiences that you have, because I think that's something that I know I could benefit from. There's the points when you go through your career where you've been a writer and then you might be being a head writer or a script editor or something else, and no one actually tells you how to do that. You might have experience of watching other people do it and know what you like and what you don't like, but there's no necessarily somebody you can kind of go to ask. So when you are having some informal mentorship like that, how do you kind of step that up? both from the perspective of someone of mentoring somebody else. What sort of parameters do you need to set up? What sort of expectations do you set up, and how does that work?
I mean, I think laying out expectations is quite key, as in what you can offer. I mean, in fact, the day that I was asked to be on this panel, I had a meeting with some girls that I'd mentored earlier in their career, and now they have just been offered their first head writer job. So they were asking me for that, and then at the end of that, I said, "Can I be on your team?" So that was like a really lovely example of the kind of full circle of it, and that just came from keeping in touch from both sides. Actually, that was they were very, very good at keeping in touch, but I did believe in them, and I also did. So I do think keeping in touch, following careers, and like I said, I think being really clear what you can offer. So sometimes I think it doesn't have to be that kind of length of commitment. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you can just be very clear and say, I can offer this chat, and then, email me next year, and that's sort of clear.
I think so, because I think sometimes you want to offer your time and you want to be generous with your time, but you also want to be clear that there's aspects that your own professional development has to come as well, and there's ways in which you do that. So I can see that. Mariama, from the perspective of seeking a mentor, what kind of tips do you have? Do you have any experience of kind of informally reaching out to people and finding people within the industry to connect with?
So I'd say LinkedIn is good because people actually do respond, which is great. So I guess doing your research and seeing if there's a show that you're particularly interested or you have an idea for that show. So for instance, there was one company that I was trying to reach out to, and I just found their email online, and obviously a lot of them say we don't accept unsolicited scripts. At that time I didn't have an agent, but I just sent them an email anyway, and luckily it went to someone who was like, yeah, let's have a meeting, and then we had a Zoom call, and then it led to them reading my work, and we did like a full read-through of my script. And even though it didn't lead to anything down the line, it was just literally just going on their website and emailing them. So I think it's worth it. I mean, I sent probably 45 emails and only one I got a response, but that one led to a lot of other things, even though that script didn't get taken up. So I think it's just, you really have to grind, you really have to hustle, and don't be put down if you get loads of rejections, because you just need one yes out of 20 no's, and then that will lead to something. So
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think a lot of the time we can be quite reticent to ask for help because we don't want to appear vulnerable, or that we don't know what we're doing, or that we aren't sure of what we're doing. And I think, having the tenacity to go, actually, no, it's a scattershot thing. I'm going to, well, not a scattershot. I'm looking for people within my industry who I can connect with, and I have to be able to accept that rejection as part of the process of finding the right person for me is a useful thing. I think sometimes we can just send one email, it doesn't come back, oh, there you go. Yeah. See, I knew it wouldn't. Whereas the more you send, the more likely you are to get that positive response. Tim, what do you like? When people approach you, what kind of things would you like to see when people are saying, I need some mentorship? What kind of things are you looking for when an email comes through?
It's always good to read someone's stuff. I like to read that before we meet, but I think things like this are also good. So making a personal connection at a conference, or LinkedIn is always good just before a conference. I have a sort of love-hate relationship with LinkedIn, but I think that's when it's at its best, because then the follow-ups are easier to achieve. And yeah, it's better to know what the writer's voice is and what their lane might be, so you can advise them or give them feedback more effectively, I suppose.
Yeah, because I think that's another thing. It's one thing to get a mentor; it's another thing to get a mentor who works for you. And it's not just even about the industry or the part of the industry you might be wanting to work in. It's also about that connection in terms of personality, in terms of whether you're getting on with the person, and that's something that you can really only find out the more you connect with them. Fantastic. So, are we all qualified to be mentors? There's a question for us. Because I think, again, you were talking about impesto syndrome. What's that? Artificial spaghetti. Yeah, this is impesto. I think there's a point where you go, when people reach out to me, to go, well, what can I tell you, really? You know what I mean? It's like I think a lot of us have very specific career paths and very individual career paths through this industry, and you kind of go, well, if I were to suggest doing what I did, 6 of you would be dead in a ditch. Some of you would have given it up, and the other of you would be, maybe one of you would be writing. It's a very specific career path that we all find ourselves on. So when people approach, how did you do it? Well, you don't want to really follow that. So how do you kind of get over that point where you go, actually, what can I give, and am I qualified to give it? What do you feel about that, Becky?
I feel strongly that yes, you can do it.
That's the right answer, Becky.
And there's a quote, and I can't remember who said it. It might have been Socrates, or it might be my dad. But
Did they both have beards?
but that you are best at teaching what you're learning. And so, there is just something brilliant about spending time with somebody when they're building up the basics or coming at it from a different angle that you came from, and it can only be a good thing for you.
Yeah.
And like you said before, it's a two-way relationship. And I do think as well, going back to the previous question, it's quite good to work out what that two-way relationship is quite early on. So if when you do reach out for a mentor, you're quite specific about what you think you want. That's going back to that, but sorry, it went off.
No, that's absolutely right. I think it's true.
But yes, so you can. Also, I think there's the imposter syndrome, but there's also the thing that maybe I haven't got enough time. And like I said before, sometimes it doesn't need that much time. I mean, I was on a kind of BAFTA guru kind of speed mentoring thing once when it was 5 minutes of our time and you kind of went around the room. And actually, it's amazing what you can get out even from that short period of time.
Yeah. And Mariama, when have people approached you to be a mentor to them at this point?
It's interesting because I think when we were discussing this, I was thinking, because I see myself as a new writer, I was thinking, oh, surely I wouldn't be a mentor. But then realizing, oh, no, like the fact that I've just kind of got in is like the perfect time to then help people who are trying to get in. So, yeah, I'm realizing that I would be in a good position to help someone out because I feel like it's all really fresh. And sometimes if you've been doing it successfully for a long time, not always, but sometimes you might be thinking, oh, how did I get in initially? So at the moment it's very, very fresh, so yeah.
Yes. I faxed the commissioning editor of the BBC. Get your fax machine out. No, exactly. I think it's absolutely true. I paged him. And it was always a him at that point. And I think, you do have to, as I say, the younger you are, the more relevant that experience and that approach has been. Therefore, the closer you are to that process, and probably the more likely that advice will be to be beneficial, certainly in the material sense. What about you, Tim? Do you ever have that kind of, am I in the place where I can really give the advice?
Yeah, I think if you stick to what you know, like Becky was saying, I think you can be effective, and you do learn things when you're kind of sharing your wisdom. I have a habit of turning it into free therapy. It always seems to go that way. Just talking about what it's like to do what we do, which is pretty light and frivolous on the surface, but it's creative jobs are hard, aren't they? And
Really hard. We should be paid more.
we should.
It's affirming.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is.
And actually, even when it's not fresh, it's good to be reminded of what it is that we learned when we were starting off and how we, particularly with writing, there are certain things that you learn at the beginning and then it becomes second nature, whether it's plot, structure, character, and then it's good to be reminded of actually those are the bits that if you are struggling with a story, it's good to go back to kind of go, okay, which one of those fundamental bits have I gotten or not got right? And that does come from having that slightly different vantage point that you get from spending time as a mentor.
Yeah, and I think that, one of the things that you forget as you kind of progress through the career is what you learn. It does become second nature. The idea that a CBeebies show will be different from a CBBC show, from a Nickelodeon show, from a Turner show, and people are often very keen to get into the industry. The nuance that exists within it is something that experience allows you to bring, and then that is a useful thing to bring forward, I think. So, we've touched on it a little bit, but as a mentor, what do you get? And is it kind of incumbent upon us as an industry to try and set up more of these informal mentoring schemes? What do you get out of it as a head writer, Becky?
It's a feel-good feeling. Makes me feel like I'm doing my bit.
Yep.
Friendships, relationships that lead somewhere. A little black book of contacts for when I'm asked to get a team together that I have already put the legwork in with. So that's a kind of shorthand for that. That's very useful. It enhances my writing in terms of hearing different voices, whether that's about diversity or from a different discipline. And sometimes it's quite useful when you're mentoring somebody and going through actually what the process is, and they might have come from theatre or radio, and that being challenged can be quite a useful tool. So yes, lots of...
Yeah. And Tim, from your perspective, you were talking about you can sometimes find new scripts, you can sometimes find people who are going to become the stars of tomorrow. Is there what else do you get, even from those ones that perhaps don't lead to that kind of golden egg of I found the next show? Because I presume that's one of many who you have mentored over the years.
Yeah.
So even from those that perhaps aren't going to achieve that aspect within your company, but might with someone else, what are the benefits of mentoring in general?
Adding to the pool, you know, you're nurturing the next. I don't want to say crop because that's a bit brutal, but then you know you're watering the garden, aren't you? Yeah, and yeah, you're adding to the evolution of talent in our corner of the industry, and that can only be a good thing. And I do think it makes you, remember the basics and. And you know, it's an opportunity to shake things up on a production, and I've never regretted taking a risk on someone, even if it didn't work out. I've never regretted it, and I'd like to think that you know it's beneficial for everyone, and I think it's incumbent on us to always help people a few rungs down who are coming up.
Perfect. And Mariama, you were talking about people, you were thinking about now being in a position where you could mentor other people. Have you actually started doing that yet? Has anyone come up to you and gone, I mean, I'm just looking at the room and going, if they haven't yet, just beware. That's why the tables are here. But has that happened to you before, Mariama? Have you done that yet?
I haven't officially become a mentor yet, but I definitely want to become one.
You get a special badge and everything if you officially become a mentor. It says, I don't know what I'm doing on it. There you are, keen to be a mentor, and clearly got a wealth of very relevant experience about it. And I think there's also aspects as well around the creativity and how you make a mark within it. But what you were saying earlier, Tim, about the kind of outlook of the creative industries being a slightly fluffy, lovely, friendly place, and it is, obviously, we're all here. But it is still a business, I think. And I think some of the skills as a mentor that you can pass on aren't just about the way in which you might approach a particular person or approach a particular script. I think there's aspects of how you set yourself up professionally as a writer and what it is that how you can approach a production company, how you do go into a writer's room that it's useful to work with. Does anyone have any kind of experience of helping people in those environments? I think one of the things that's happened over the last year or two with COVID is that writers' rooms as a physical entity have become fewer and farther between. And I know when I was starting out, that was a place where you would learn from your peers. You'd see how other people more experienced than you would approach a writer's room, would pitch their ideas. And I think Zoom is wonderful, but it's a slightly more formal approach to that. You give everybody a space. You don't have that, which is great, but it doesn't have the vibrancy necessarily of a physical writer's room. And I think alongside that, it means that you don't get to interact in the coffee break with your peers over what they're doing, what they're doing. So how important do you think it is to help people with not just the creative aspect of it, but also the professional aspect of it, how you approach the situations you will find yourselves in when you enter this? Tim, I'm going to go to you first on that. What do you think? Writers in the professionality, do you help them with that at any point?
Yeah, definitely.
It's the therapy bit.
Yes, that's the therapy for both of us. Taking Mr. Radio Play as an example, you know, I noticed at lunchtime he hadn't said very much, so I said to him, say one thing this afternoon, and then we couldn't shut him up. And I think it is that thing of, you know, in the kind of bun fight of a writer's room, knowing that, you know, even if this is day dot for you, you can still lob ideas in, and you know it's really important to break your duck in those terms. And I think it's good as well to talk to writers you're mentoring about what is good and what's bad, probably in that order, so that you're not scaring them off, but you've got to prepare them for, 9/10 rejection, the politics of being head-written, overwritten, underwritten and rewritten, that's a reality of writing. I think you have to have that balanced approach.
Mariama, what kind of things do you wish you'd known before you entered into this industry? So you win a competition, you are mentoring, you're looking, you go, brilliant, I'm going into the fluffy world of kids TV. What kind of things do you think, actually, as a new writer, I wish somebody had sat me down and gone, this is what I would have liked to know?
I think the whole process of the scripts is very mysterious, because I think when you're a writer, you're just kind of thinking, okay, I've got original ideas, and I hope one day these original ideas are going to get made, and so on, so on. But the reality is, for most writers, you'll write on other people's shows, and it's also learning how to work with different head writers, different script editors, all the different stages, because some people say it's outline, some people say it's a treatment, some people say it's a premise. So sometimes you're checking, is this the same thing? And I feel like I do ask a lot of stupid questions, but it's just to check. I'm like, is the outline and treatment the same thing? And they're like, oh yes, it is. And just those little things. So I think it's knowing all the different stages, but knowing that whatever show you're writing on, it's always going to be completely different. Even just down to the font and the style of the writing and the amount of spaces and stuff. So you're learning so much in such a short space of time that if there was a way to know that beforehand, I think it would help. But I guess it's kind of part of the thrill, changing fonts and stuff. But
That's what we're all in it for, Mariama. Keep your BAFTAs, give me the fonts. No, it's true. I think that's very true. I think there's sometimes, when certainly myself and my writing partner entered into the industry, there did seem to be this mysterious code of people who would hoard that information. Yes, we'll go to outline now. Is that scene by scene? Yes, it is, and it's very odd, isn't it? And the idea that the terminology, and it's still fluid. Sometimes it's a beat sheet, sometimes it's this, and I think depending upon the program you're working on and where it's originated and who's involved. And I think there is an aspect of being able to say to people, actually, this is all part of the course. Don't worry about it. It's fine. You'll find your way out. But yeah, that's very interesting. Becky, is there stuff you wish you'd been told?
What do I wish I'd been told? I mean, probably to have more confidence to ask those silly questions, I think that's a really important part of being a mentor, a lot of it is the therapy side of it, and is about confidence and providing a sense of just, go for it and don't be afraid to ask and keep encouraging that. I have spent a lot of time doing that. And I think there was probably certain bits in my career that would have been useful, maybe.
Yeah, okay, it's great, yeah. And I think even as we go through the industry, similarly, I know that as a head writer or a script editor or whatever it is they call me these days, and sometimes I don't want to know what they call me these days, but
Just the black sheep.
yeah, it's fine. Then you kind of go, yeah, I wish felt I could reach out to somebody who had perhaps worked with that production company, or who had worked with those producers, or had worked with those channels before. And I think that's something that, as a community, both of producers and writers, we should feel more confident to engender and feel like we're trying to make it a supportive place where actually if someone pings you a thing on LinkedIn, asks, I'm working with these guys, rather than going, oh, I'm not. We go, oh, how can I help you?
Yeah. And that doesn't stop, like you said
No.
before, that happens at every stage. And actually preparing for this, it did make me think more than I had before that I should actually reach out now more and ask for more things, more mentorship for specific things, like whether it's doing more kind of feature writing or book adapting, or so
Yeah.
I think it is important to encourage that as a career.
Yeah, well, there's a question, actually. Do we have a duty? It's all very well to say people should approach us and should ask us. How can we as a community try to make ourselves more approachable? How can we say to people, actually, we are open to have somebody approach me or you or anybody else on this panel or within the room without feeling they're either bothering us or it might be a problem. We have a duty to do it, I feel, but how can we try and position ourselves in a way that it feels like it's a more acceptable thing to do? Mariama, do you have any ideas on that?
Well, I did something with, it was ITV, it was a 50-50 for women in comedy, and it was basically like speed dating, and you got to just sit with a producer for like 5 minutes and kind of like pitch ideas and stuff. And through that, I made more contacts, because when it's just loads of people in a room, it can be quite hard to approach people and start conversations. So I feel like something like that for mentoring, where you just get like 5 minutes, not like you have to like sell yourself, but just say what you're kind of interested in, because I think it's quite quick when you realise that you vibe with someone, and I think that's the most important thing when you're looking for a mentor, someone you can like have a coffee with or just have a quick phone conversation, and you don't feel awkward to ask them a silly question or stuff like that. So more than anything, you want someone that you get on with, because then it'll be easier to ask those tough questions.
Absolutely, brilliant. And Tim, in terms of from a production side, obviously there are formal mentoring programs which you touched on earlier on. Are there other things that we can do to try and make ourselves be more approachable and more amenable to new people within the industry, feeling they can approach us without it either looking like a weakness or looking like they're tatting for work, or looking just generally we want help?
Yeah, I mean, I have an open door policy, but I am slow. I'm slow to respond, and that's normally driven by production deadlines, or dictated by production deadlines, which have to be met first. So I always say, don't take silence for a shut door. Just remind me, and it might mean that I put you nearer the top of the pile, because the pile is real, and I think there's a fine line between over persistence and persistence. Persistence is great. Don't just email once, because people are busy.
Yeah. And Becky, what do you think we could do as an industry to try and make ourselves feel like we're more approachable, rather than just freelancers up against each other sometimes?
I mean, I think it's quite good to encourage a conversation between, like, when you're a script editor or a head writer with producers, to try and make that process as flexible and as open to mentorship as possible. And sometimes that is with an official mentor scheme, but sometimes it could be if there are new writers on the team, but keeping up with the same production deadlines, then I think it's quite good as mentors to ask for a kind of transparency at the top of production, so like a flexibility of the process. So with some writers, they might not go through the same traditional process. It might be more, I'm going to get a great idea from you, but I'm going to write it up into a scene by scene and hand it back, and then you will write the script. And so I think a kind of conversation between us and producers and newer writers to try and create more opportunities like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good call, because I think there's Andrew and I were just working on Lloyd of the Flies for Aardman, and we were head writing that, and we had a very clear two-stage process where we wanted to encourage new talent in, but we also realised we have production deadlines to make, and you kind of have to go, well, we want, these people might write 6, these people might write 3, and that is absolutely fine. And the production have already factored that in to the process, because the worst thing I think is that you try and mentor a new writer, and then that comes crashing into the reality of a production schedule, and suddenly, rather than mentoring that writer, you're doing that, or you're overwriting that work. Yeah. And I don't think that works for anybody. I think you want the mentor and the mentee in that situation to feel like they've both contributed to it. And I think, yeah, it feels like there's an aspect of both being open to it, but also setting up productions from the offset, yeah, with that expectation built in. It's not just we've got this program. We've got this program. We're putting it into a real life scenario, and we've made sure that it's not going to crash when it gets to 9 months in. It also feels like we're kind of saying we need to make time within our schedules, that mentoring is something that we think about as part of our job. Because I think, again, we're all freelancers, we're all very busy. There's never enough hours in the day for what we need to do. And, sometimes we might be so busy looking for our own work that we don't really have the time or the inclination to have other people find work as well. You go, I'm doing my stuff, why should I have you do your stuff? But it feels like if we want to make that a genuine and conscious thing, we need to build in some time within our own schedules and sort of respect that time. Would you agree, Mariama? Yeah,
no, definitely. I was also going to say that I feel like there's people who I see as my mentor, but they don't know that. So I don't think you always need the label necessarily. If you just have someone that you can send them an email now and again and ask them a question, that's like a mentor. But you haven't actually formally made it, so they don't feel that there's a big commitment. So there's no pressure on them, there's no pressure on you, and then it just feels a bit more natural. So yeah, go and find your
Anonymous mentor.
visuals. Yeah.
Stalk somebody. They don't know. It's fine. Tim, what would you say about that?
I think. Sorry, I was just mentally tossing up the people who I might be mentoring.
Invoice them, Tim. Invoice them.
I think it is about carving out time, and producers are lucky in that they probably can delegate a bit because we have script teams that can take it on, and that's something I plan to do. So building a bit of a pipeline in order to service those obligations, really, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's a very dry way of putting it, but
No.
I think maybe we need to be technical.
A pipeline to service obligations
Yeah.
feels like a very touchy-feely way of putting mentorship. That's very odd. And Becky, do you carve out time specifically to do that bit of it, or is it something that kind of is ad hoc?
It is a bit ad hoc, but I will always try and carve out time. And I think, like I said before, sometimes it's about just being honest about what that time is. And if it is just a quick phone call or a Zoom, then that's fine. Or it might be a bigger pledged commitment.
All right, so I'm going to ask you some do's and don'ts about things that you've learned that you should do or shouldn't do, both when you're kind of mentoring somebody, but also when you're approaching somebody else to help mentor you. So, Mariama, what would be your top sort of do's and don'ts? What would be a do and a don't from approaching it from the point of view of I'm looking for somebody to mentor me?
So a do is, actually, let me start with don'ts, actually. Don't take things too personal. Don't take too many no's personal, because sometimes it might not be the right time, and then they might be interested in a year or 2 years' time or something like that. And I would say for do's, just keep your options open. Don't be too fixed in what you want to achieve, because sometimes it might surprise you. You might think, I want to do one certain thing, but if another opportunity comes available and it might lead you in that direction later on down the line, so keep your options open is kind of what I would say.
Okay, and from a production point of view, Tim, what are your do's and don'ts when you get those emails through? What are the things you're going, oh, that's a winner, and that one, not so much?
Send the script. Send your favourite one. Be discerning about what that sample is. Don't kind of hedge your bets and send 3, because it's just more to tackle, and it'll slide down the pile. But it also says something if you've identified that this script will suit me, and I think that's a good move. Be persistent, but not over persistent. I think people should not give up, but one way to avoid being over persistent is targeting lots of people in the same team. If
Change your name.
Yeah. And you don't want to be kind of coming at people from all angles. I think it's best just to kind of find a sensible window in which to knock again and say, don't forget, and that's fair enough.
Okay, so persistence but not being over persistent. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Becky, what would you say?
I'd say don't overpromise,
Uh-huh.
because I think sometimes, I know I can be like that, kind of go in and go, we're going to be friends for life, and I'm going to be your therapist for the next 3 years.
Yes.
So, be clear what you can offer in terms of time and in terms of actually what you're covering. And do's, I think it's quite useful to work out early on what the two-way element of that relationship is. So not in a kind of, what am I going to get out of it way, but there will be something brilliant that you can get out of it.
Yes.
So identifying what that is.
Yeah, so it's kind of making sure that you're both on the same page before you
Yeah.
begin that process. And I also think it's fine to say, actually, if you've been lucky enough to find a mentor and you've done that work, you've set out what I want and what you want, and they're not the same thing. I think it's absolutely fine at that point to go, well, actually, do you know what, maybe you're not the right mentor for me. Because I think sometimes we can be so grateful to have got any mentor whatsoever that we cling on to them for dear life, even if that person quite clearly isn't the person that we should be working with.
They've moved the country.
Yes, they've moved the country, changed their name, put you in their spam filter. Those sort of telltale signs that this isn't working. Yeah, quite right. Brilliant. I think we have got a bit of time for some questions from the room. So does anybody have any questions for the panel that they would like to ask about, or just issues about, comments about what we've been discussing, what you found useful, what you haven't found useful about mentorship and mentoring? Just before you ask the question, I have to say, this is being recorded for a podcast. So even though we can hear you in the room, we do need to be able to have the questions on mic, please. So there's someone down at the front here who would like to ask a question. If you could say your name and a bit of context and ask your question.
Hello, I'm Jo Clegg, and I'm a scriptwriter, and I've got a friend. I just want to say this is great. It just feels like, consciousness raising, and I feel like somehow it's going to help everybody, because everybody is going to think, well, there was that session at CMC. You know what? I might just send, Denise an email to say, can you help me just with this? I'm having this moment with this feedback, or whatever it is, or Darren or Becca, or whatever. We can't all talk to Davey Moore about our story problems, or the feedback that we don't understand. I mean, I think the thing is that I've got a friend who's got a real job, and she is a real mentor and has real mentees. She also has an office space where, she might be in the kitchen and, she might be having a bad time, and she can kind of sneak out onto the fire escape with, a trusted colleague and go, I don't know how to pick myself up this time. We're on our own so much of the time, and our partners and our families and our friends probably think, wow, your industry can really blindside you with sort of, you think it's all going really well, and then this happens, the funding falls out, or, you thought you were going to get 6 episodes and now you're not, and all that kind of stuff. We all understand each other. There's none of the shame attached, I think. There's no judgment. There's no, you must have got it wrong then. But, I sort of feel, because people don't understand how the industry works, might get in the way of feeling better faster and getting back on the horse, which is really ultimately what we've got to do. We've just got to kind of go, okay, that's it, I'm back on, I've stopped taking it personally, I'm off again. Oh, and here's an idea. Just the fact that we're even having this conversation is brilliant, I think. And I think just informally reaching out and saying, if you've got 5 minutes, would you prefer me to send you an email, or can we talk on the phone? I think we'd all get so much from it, and it would build trust. I mean, yes, there is that kind of like, what do you mean you're working on so-and-so? Why aren't I working on so-and-so? Get over that and just help each other, kind of creative to creative. I think that would be really great.
I think that's definitely what the genesis of this was about, and I think that's a really valid point. I think we've talked about helping you get work and in the business, and how you might set yourself up from a business footing, but also the emotional resilience, I think, of being in a creative industry where quite regularly your ideas are being batted back at you with scribbles on, and you have to go, we want your best ideas. I gave you my best idea, and you scribbled on it. What else you got? Well, nothing now. I've just got my misery and my loneliness. So you kind of do have those moments. You go, yeah, actually, I want to be able to phone somebody up and say, that's shit, isn't it? And they go, yeah, that is shit. Right, back to work. And I think that's absolutely valid. Anybody else have another question? Yes, Denise, in the middle there.
Hi. Just to add to your point that you had kind of started talking about how bringing less experienced writers onto a team, crashing into that schedule when you suddenly realise, I want them to succeed here, but the schedule's not going to allow it, so I'm going to end up rewriting their stuff, and that not helping anybody. I think that a plea to producers and script coordinators and schedulers would be to make sure that that's built into the schedule, so that we set new writers up for success from the beginning of the process, so that seeing them through each draft, they know that their draft is meaningful, and that what they're writing is meaningful, and they're learning, and they're not just serving this kind of juggernaut of a schedule that has to be got through. And the other thing is that another informal way of kind of mentoring each other really is to set up little groups. So Chitra, who has organised this session, I think, and Rachel. We're both part of a writers' group called Work in Progress, and we meet once a month and we chat about. Sometimes it's a therapy session. Sometimes it's talking about what we're writing of our own stuff. Sometimes it's to just have a bit of a whinge. But those are always really good forums to be able to pass contacts on to each other and to be able to try and find ways to give other people a leg up. And I think those kind of informal groups can really help to mentor each other.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And in terms of just to bring in the panel, whose job is it, do you think, to make sure that what Denise is talking about there, and what we raised earlier on about perhaps production meeting the reality of what we're trying to do as a community, whose job is it to try and make sure that that space is carved out for new and emerging writers coming into the industry? Because, it could be script editors, it could be the production, it could be us. I mean, I think I know the answer is probably a bit of everybody, isn't it? Yeah. But no, I'm not looking at you specifically, Tim.
No, but it is.
But it is, yeah.
Yes.
But how can we each within our own little bit of that process try and make sure that that time and that space is ring fenced for the people who need it when those sort of production demands hit? Tim, I'm going to go for you first.
I think it's a righteous issue because you never get as much time for scripting as you want, but you have to launch new writers into that arena, or they'll just stay forever on the sidelines. So I think it's probably about doing something slightly separate, which is a kind of nursery slope while you're waiting for the green light, or just generally as a kind of development initiative in your own. Under your own aegis, so that when the time comes and it is all hands on deck, you can put people in with a bit more knowledge.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Becky, from a head writer's point of view or a script editor's point of view or someone who's managing a team of writers, what kind of tools do we have to try and make sure that space is given?
Well, that's our bit of the responsibility, isn't it? So we have that relationship with the writer, and it's our duty to ask the Tims for that time, and it is different, and for the permission for it to be different for every writer potentially, and to have that flexibility. And I think that is down to us to some extent to work out at the beginning of the process, and to have those transparent conversations with the writers so that everyone is across it from the start.
Yeah. And Mariama, how do you feel in those circumstances? Have you ever felt in the position where you go, actually, this is moving a bit too fast, or I'd rather there were some points at which I could have these conversations and there's no space for them, or do you feel quite supported most of the times within your...
I think I've been really lucky on the shows that I've written on because I've had great head writers and script editors who know that I am a new writer, and they've given me that time, and they've just been like, so we'll have like the official meeting, and then they'll send me a message on the side and be like, if you want to just have another extra meeting just to go through the points without the producers there, then we can. And that's always been helpful because you do feel a little bit like, there's only so many questions you want to ask without looking like you don't know what you're doing. So
yeah, absolutely. I think if you're on a team with established writers and they're all on Zoom and it's nearly 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they're all thinking about lunch, and you're still going, but hang on. You do feel actually, I that's a very recognisable thing, and I think absolutely it's a good thing to hear that just being able to reach out. You might not take that, but from a head writer's point of view, to be open and available to say, look, I realise that can be a quite intimidating place to ask questions that you feel everyone else knows the answers to. Mm-hmm. Feel free to reach out in a back channel, and hope that will work. Go on then, Tim, we've got more time for one more question.
Hey, great panel, guys. Tim Bain, writer and creator. I just realised I was thinking about LinkedIn messages. I won't name names, but I remember one of the people on the panel didn't reply to my LinkedIn message about 8 years ago, and I'm not naming names.
Mariama!
Just suddenly occurred to me looking at the four of you. So just in regards to LinkedIn messages, as a suggestion, I get a lot of messages. I'm very, very happy to get them from new writers, and often they've got a project that they're developing and they want advice and so forth. And one suggestion I have, is rather than offer some half-baked thoughts quickly from me, if I definitely will if I've got time, but I always suggest, and I wish I'd told myself this in the early days, is seek out a script editor. And obviously there's going to be a cost involved, but you're getting so much wonderful insight from someone whose job it is to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and that helps when you're sending it out to the Tims of the world that you've got a really polished script. So I just wondered if you thought that's a good idea, or if I'm fobbing them off saying that.
No, I think there's nothing wrong with going, actually, this is not my expertise, this is not my area, what you need is this sort of person. And I think so long as you're maybe trying to help them find that person as well, kind of this name is a person that might help, that's a very valid thing. Would you agree? I guess.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to that idea of just being really clear what you want from a mentor, isn't it?
Yeah, because you might approach the wrong person. This, as we've been discussing, this industry can be quite obscure in its terminology. It can change its terminology on a whim, and sometimes someone who's reaching out to you might not know that the person you actually need to speak to is this person rather than this person. But yeah, absolutely cool. Brilliant. So we have got a moment at the end of this session where I've got to go a bit televangelist, which is where we are going to get some people to pledge some mentorship time. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. It's happening here, now, in this room. So we're going to start with the panel. Tim, will you, ladies and gentlemen, right here in this room in front of all these witnesses, will you, Sir Tim, pledge some time? There's the producer's answer.
By the way, it was me. I'm really sorry. No, I don't. I do remember getting it now. Yes, no, I've already talked to my script editors about finding some time. Do I get specific now about how much?
No, you don't have to be, Tim, but you're going to say there is some time available from people at Lyme, and they will be open and receptive to people who've been in this room and been at this conference to approach them. And we'll tell you how to do that in a second, and that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And Becky, are you happy to...
Yes, I am.
Are
I
you-
will pledge.
Ooh.
How do we do this?
No.
An hour a month?
An hour a month from Becky. Thank you very much. Oh. Very good. No, that's perfect. And Mariama.
That's what I'm pledging as well, by the way.
Mariama, are you willing to dip your toe here and now into the mentorship program of new and emerging writers?
Yes, definitely. I'll do the same.
An hour a month. Fantastic. Fantastic. Still got a bit Alcoholics Anonymous, isn't it? I will also pledge an hour a month as well. So if anybody wants some insights from me, God help you. An hour a month. And is there anybody in the room? Lena Byrne at the back. Can we have a microphone? I need to have a microphone for this one. You can take it to Lena, actually. Lena, how much time will you pledge to this fine organisation?
I will totally do an hour a month, but could I just very quickly say, I accidentally became mentor to kids in my former school, and for lots of kids and their families, they don't know what a writer is or a producer is, or that this can be a job, or that they can work in cartoons. So I will pledge an hour happily. I'll pledge 2 hours happily if someone goes back to school and talks to the students in their school to say that you can do this job.
Yeah, that's a good call. Thank you, Lena. Was there anybody else who was prepared? Anybody? I'm going mobile. Hold tight. He walks among us. Who else? Who else had their hand? I saw you, sir. I saw you before. Your name, sir?
My name is John Lomas Bullivant. So the rationale behind my mentoring is if you can survive the feedback and comments I get you, then you've got a fighting chance of surviving in the industry.
And how much time will you pledge, John?
Do you know what? I'll just show off and say I'll do 2 hours a month because it's more than any of you guys.
This is how I dreamed it would go. Shame on you. Who could you be?
I'm Rebecca Watson, an agent. I will pledge an hour a month, but as I'm a writer's agent, not to writers, actually to anybody else on the periphery of the animation and children's industry who would like to understand it from a slightly different perspective, I think. Because it's brilliant what you've all talked about, but I think it's been quite writer-focused, and I think there's sometimes other people. I mean, I have people who are my unofficial mentors who I speak to regularly, and we exchange information. And obviously, as an agent, I'd like to think that I'm always looking after my clients to listen to all of your complaints. However, I can't listen to all of them because there's lots of you, and you're always complaining. No, but anybody, script editors, script coordinators, producers even, or line producers, or people from the slightly other side of things, I think I would find helpful for me.
Hey, thank you very much again. And as you're my agent, that's 17.5% of my time as well as that you've just donated for me. So that's very helpful.
Hello, I'm Alex from Darren McQueen, script coordinator. Similar to Rebecca, anyone interested in script coordinating and supporting writers, script editors, showrunners, if you're interested in that, I'd be very happy to do an hour a month. We've done Teletubbies' Lovely Little Farm recently, so if anyone wants to approach me, please do. My email's in there.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. There's more. Okay, we've got one time for one more.
I'm Sarah. I'm the development executive at Magic Light. So I'm the Gruffalo, Pip and Posy. I'll do an hour a month to anyone who would like to get in touch, basically.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate it. We are running out of time, and I'm going to go back to the sedentary position. And before we finish, I do have some housekeeping to say. So we have consciously not gathered emails here because we do think that part of the process of being a mentor and mentor is trying to make those relationships as we've talked about it over the course of this session. So we're going to have a tea break at this point. Please do use that time. We're going to be down by the toy box at the bottom of the stairs, so that's kind of our area. Please do use the time to approach people who have offered time, approach people who you think you might want to work with anyway, other people on that, and they should be quite happy to give you their emails, but get their emails from them and try and form those relationships. In order to make it clear as well, this is a slightly odd thing, but in order to make it clear that if you approach somebody who has been in this room for mentorship, that you were in the room and you didn't maybe get to speak to them downstairs, but you have their email, in the subject line of the email, please write the word aha. Now, those of you who know me may know that I do have a slight affinity with that Scando pop band. It wasn't my decision to make that call. That was a decision made above my pay grade. It's not me just trying to populate the wonders of their 8th and 9th and underheard 10th album. It's also just to make sure that you know that if that email comes with that in the subject line, it's come from someone at CMC. And I think that has already proved that you've made inroads and you are passionate about the work that you want to do because you're here. So I think that should be rewarded with a little pass that should hopefully get you to the top of one of Tim's piles. Sounded wrong, Tim, when I put it that way, didn't I? I don't want to be at the top of your piles, Tim. But anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I've got one more announcement. The coffee in the foyer is being sponsored by the wonderful Aardman. Next up in this room is Are Your Ears Burning at 3:30 p.m. and across on the main stage is Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is, also at 3:30 p.m. But before we go, please can I ask you to put your hands together for a fantastic panel.